I'm delighted to be here. Thank you all for coming out on this afternoon.
Yes, thank you all.
Hear from me.
Well, I would love to just get started and just talk about the title of your book.
Yes.
In particular, I know there are probably people in the audience that have their first books and are curious about, you know, how you actually came to that title.
I'll tell you, my mother thought of the title, but she also thought of my name, so that makes sense. So my parents, as I mentioned in the introduction, grew up in segregation in South Florida. And they came of age in the 1960s. They went to historically black colleges. My mother is a graduate of Tuskegee Institute, and my father went to the University of North Carolina Central. They had enormous pride in their own heritage, and when I was born, felt very strongly that they wanted to teach me the same sense of who I am here in this society. And so my aunt was in the Peace Corps in Africa, West Africa, when I was born, and my mother asked her to send a list of African names. And among them, she selected Ketanji, which she was told meant lovely one.
Well, you mentioned your birth, and you were born September 14th, 1970.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was a significant period of time, which you alluded to.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you talk more about that?
I think that the timing of my birth cannot be overstated in terms of its importance and significance to who I have become. If you will recall, 1970 was within 4 or 5 years of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the end of Jim Crow segregation. And what that meant for my parents, as I said, they had grown up in Miami, they went to college, they moved to Washington, D.C., as so many African Americans did at this period of time. And they thought, you know, we were so restricted in our ability to do things in society because of segregation. Now, in 1970, with the restrictions lifted, our daughter is going to do all the things. We're going to teach her to, you know, if there were music lessons, I was in the music lessons. If there were swimming lessons, I was in the swimming lessons. I remember we have in Miami-Dade the county fair, and part of the fair is the kids can come and you memorize various poems and speeches and things. I might have been 8 years old and I'm on the stage. My mother has taught me Margaret Walker's For My People, and I memorized that and I did my program. And so, you know, it was a time of great optimism and enthusiasm for African Americans, the newfound freedoms in our society. And my parents were so intentional about making me feel and believe that I could do anything I wanted to do.
I believe. Intergenerational impact. Let's talk about your grandparents and what they meant to you. We've talked about, and I alluded to this in my welcome, you know, their impacts in my life, but please share.
Well, one of the blessings of the book is that I was able to take my family arc story back, you know, not only to my parents' generation, but also my grandparents. My grandparents on both sides actually were from Georgia. And my maternal grandparents were the ones that I was mostly knew and were closest to. Grew up in Georgia in the 20s and 30s. They did not have a lot of things materially. My grandmother was basically an orphan, taken in by other family members. And they moved from Georgia to Miami in late 1939, because they learned that Miami, even though segregated, was trying to put investments into the black community. So many of you may have heard of Liberty City. The Liberty City community, when it was first created, was like a new and upcoming place for, you know, segregated for sure, but there were investments for middle class black people. My mother grew up in the Liberty City project community, and it was like the great place for black people to live in Miami. And so, you know, my grandfather had been a chauffeur in Georgia for a white family, and they moved to Miami, and he worked for a beer company driving a truck. And then at one point he got fed up with how they were speaking to him, and he quit. And he started his own landscaping business. He was always very good with gardening, and he had 3 sons who would go with him and cut people's lawns, and the business got bigger and bigger. And my grandparents made these kinds of investments for our family, but they were not educated, but they put the money and the time and the effort into educating their children.
Terrific. Let's talk about a little bit about you as an 11-year-old.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Now I know this audience can relate. Saturday afternoon,
Yes.
back in the day, or even now.
Yes.
With The Essence
Yes.
magazine.
Yes.
Oh, is somebody in the audience named Susan Taylor? Hello. And you're leafing through that.
Yes.
And and you stopped and you noticed something. You noticed your birthday twin.
I did. So I noticed that Judge Constance Baker Motley had my birthday. And it was such a revelation for me. I had at that point already decided that I was going to be a lawyer, because my parents, as I said, I was born in Washington, D.C. My parents were public school teachers at the time that I was born, and about 2-3 years in, my father decided that he wanted to go to law school. And so he, when I was 3 years old, got into the University of Miami Law School, and my parents are both from Miami. They moved back so that he could go to law school. And my earliest memories are of being on the campus. We had an apartment on campus, of sitting across the table from my dad, and he has his law books and I have my coloring books, and we're working together. And so I always thought I wanted to be a lawyer, but then I come across this revelation that the first Black female federal judge is my birthday twin. And I just thought, maybe I could be a judge, because when you see other people doing the kinds of things that you are interested in, who are like you and who've lived a life that has similarities to your own, you really start to dream bigger.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And dream big.
And dream big.
Yes. Let's talk about mentorship and mentors.
Yes.
Because you had a very significant name in your life, Fran Berger.
Fran Berger.
And you have this exceptional skill, or oratory skills.
Yes.
That were fostered, in particular, in high school.
Well, I was so fortunate because I went to a big public high school in Miami, Florida. And again, at a time in which there was such interest in developing a multicultural, wonderful community of students and people, and Fran Berger was the debate coach, speech and debate. And she saw something in me. I was very interested in, maybe because my mother had primed me from when I was little, to do public speaking, but I signed up. And she was this brassy, larger than life.
I need those.
A woman who could get anything she wanted, but she really took me under her wing in particular. And I did original oratory competitively from 9th grade to 12th grade, traveling around the country, doing competitive speaking, and it was just so foundational for who I have become.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. And then we fast forward a little bit.
Yes.
And we're, heading towards the Harvard
Yes.
University.
Which I didn't know anything about. I did not know anything about Harvard. I mean, as I said, I'm from way down Miami. My parents are first generation. They went to HBCUs. So I only found out about Harvard because they had a debate tournament there. And so for 2 or 3 years in a row, I think it was 3 years in a row, I went to this tournament, and it was in February, which was not easy for a girl from Miami, but it seemed like a nice school, so people seemed happy there, so I applied.
What did you say in your application?
In my application, I said, I really need to go to Harvard because I believe that it will help me to achieve my dream of being the first African-American female Supreme Court justice.
That part.
But there was more. There was more because I was very interested in theater, and my mother at that time was the principal of a school for the arts. So I was really into arts. So I said the first African-American female Supreme Court justice to appear on a Broadway stage.
Absolutely. Everybody do that when you're applying to college, please. And it'll come true.
Can I tell you what my grandmother said?
Please.
So I get into Harvard and I'm so excited. I mean, this was really like, you know, the reach school that you don't expect to get into. I get in and I go to my grandmother, who I'm really close to. She was aging and ill actually at the time. And I said, Grandma, I got into Harvard. It's so exciting. She said, oh, baby, Howard, that is such a
Hate you.
And I said, Grandma, I know I had said, because I said I wanted to go to school in Washington, D.C. I wanted to go to Georgetown was really my first choice. I said, Grandma, I know I said I wanted to go to Washington, D.C., but this is a school in Massachusetts, and it's a really great school. And she said, oh, well, I'm sure that Harvard is a perfectly good school, too.
Wow.
Howard was her goal.
I tell you. Well, you get to Howard. And I'm sorry, Harvard. And you're at Harvard, and it, you know, at first semester was a bit of a challenging time.
Yes.
And the theme of this festival is very interesting. There's alignment there. Can you talk about this chance encounter that happens?
Yeah, so, you know, like so many first year, freshman, first semester students away from home in a totally different environment, I was struggling at the beginning, especially early. As I said, my birthday was in September, and I remember I turned 18 right there, and nobody knew. And, you know, I had come from this big family, and I had nobody celebrating, and I was just really quite depressed in the early days. And I think I must have been manifesting that or showing that in the way that I carried myself. But I was walking through Harvard Yard one evening, and a black woman I did not know was coming toward me on the path, and she must have gleaned that I was really not doing well. And as we crossed, she leaned over to me and said, "Persevere," and kept going. And I was like, you know, it's just like a moment. And I mentioned my aunt. My aunt ended up being a missionary. She's my late aunt now, but she traveled all over the world, and she used to write me these beautiful letters. And a couple days later, when I got back to my dorm, it was my birthday, I got a letter from my aunt. And she said something to the effect of, and I still have this letter, you have to remember that God has angels that He has put all around you and to protect you and to guide you. And I reflected on that moment and wondered if that woman was an angel.
Faith. Yes, and angels surrounding you, for sure. But, you know, things pick up a little bit.
Things pick up.
Right? You're in class and, you know, someone, maybe a soon-to-be doctor is doing fun things or having a good time, getting to know each other.
Yes.
But something interesting happens.
Something interesting happens.
Can you share what
I will
was about?
share. I will share, and I'm going to try to get the story right because he's actually here. So, as I recall, this individual and I, we're in class together. No, let me start this. It's very important. Background is very important. So, she's talking about my now husband, Patrick, who we started dating in college. And for those of you who don't know, Patrick, I would say, call him a member of the Boston Brahmin. Have you heard this? That he could trace his family back to the Mayflower. They've been in Massachusetts that long. He is 7th generation Harvard. So it's like a whole thing. Very different than my background. But Patrick is a sociology major, very interested in learning about people, and he is taking a class called The Changing Concept of Race in America, which I am taking. And he's talking to me in this class, so friendly, we're getting along. I think he's kind of cute, but you know. And then, you know, this class is maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and on Tuesday and Thursday, I have a government class where I see him, and he doesn't say anything to me at all. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, friendly, happy, talking. Tuesday, Thursday, I wave down the road. He's like, you know, gives me the weird eye. So I say to my roommates, what's going on with this guy? And they're like, leave him alone. He's obviously crazy. You know? And I say, no, I'm going to confront him on one of the friendly days. So on a friendly day, I say, why don't you talk to me in our government class? And he says, I'm not taking a government class. And I said, yes, you are. I see you in this class. And then he says, oh, you must be talking about my identical twin brother. Because he does have an identical twin brother. And that was the revelation.
So good. I love it. I would love to just touch on sisterhood a little bit, because we're in, the audience is full of, you know, book clubs.
Yes.
And I have one that's been going on for over 10 years, and there we talk about everything but the books. I mean, that's what's going on. And you have this African-American literature class, and, you know, this sisterhood develops, right?
It does.
That's what it's about.
I mean, you know, so many African Americans who go to predominantly white schools find ways to find each other on campus, that you need that connection to be able to sort of withstand the environment. And for us, for me, my freshman year, taking a class on Black women writers was the place where a lot of other Black women appeared, and where we met each other. And there are 4 of us now. We ended up, throughout my time from sophomore year on, I roomed with 5 other Black women. There were 6 of us in our cluster, and then 4 of us got really, really close. And we were in each other's weddings, and you know.
One had a prediction, is that right? About...
Oh yes, one even back then, because we were all 4 of us. We went on to Harvard Law School, all of us, and she said, "You're the one. You are going to be on the Supreme Court." And Patrick said that too. My husband has said that pretty early on.
Just amazing.
But sisterhood is so important. I mean, we meet once a year. We try to continue to communicate and support one another.
So, you know, you just spoke about your career.
Yes.
And just would love to, I mean, so many accomplishments. So many. Congratulations on everything. Big law. I'm an attorney. And I don't practice for a reason. Not to say it. But so much respect for, you know, just for your journey and where you are. Can you just talk about how all the steps before, you know, coming where you are now have impacted?
Oh, well, I mean, I feel very fortunate to have done so many different things in my career. You know, for one thing, where I am now, I'm pretty stuck. I can't do anything more, so I'm glad to have gotten it all done. But, you know, I also think it's important because the more experience you have with different kinds of people and different circumstances, in my view, that has been enormously helpful to me as a judge. Oliver Wendell Holmes has a wonderful quote that I love. He said that the life of the law is not logic, it is experience. And I really believe that. And so I you know, had the great good fortune of being a law clerk on the federal courts for all 3 levels. I had a trial judge, Court of Appeals judge, and I clerked for Justice Breyer. I worked in small firms, big firms. I was a federal public defender. I'm the first federal public defender to be appointed to the Supreme Court. I worked on the Sentencing Commission, and now I have been a judge at all 3 levels of the federal system. And each one of those experiences gives you insight into how the law works or should work, how it affects real people where they are, and all of those learning experiences have informed what I do now as a justice.
And as it relates to what you do now,
Yes.
is it what you expected?
You know, because I had been a clerk, I knew a lot about the court, and it is a very traditional institution. It doesn't change a lot, so a lot of the practices and processes that we go through are the same as when I was there, and so I did expect them. I think what I didn't expect is how formal the court is, even, you know, when the justices are alone together. We have the what's called conference, which is the meeting that the justices have to decide cases. We see us up on the bench and we do the oral argument, and then we go into conference. And the clerks are not a part of conference. It's literally just the 9 justices, so I didn't have any experience with being there, and I thought, oh, maybe they're more informal. They are not informal. And so I think that was not expected. But, you know, in general, the court stays pretty much the same.
This has gone so fast, and I don't want it to end. I'm sure nobody else does, but can you just share, you know, words of wisdom with this audience right now?
Oh my goodness.
Please.
You know, I don't know that I have any particular words of wisdom other than to say, I mean, we are obviously going through pretty challenging times right now. And it's very important, I think, that people stay tuned in to what is happening in our government and in our society. That the real danger, to the extent we're talking concerns, is for people to tune out. Because this is your government, this is your society, this is your life. And we live in a democracy where the people are supposed to be the ones that decide what happens. And so the people have to remain engaged in order for that to happen. Part of what I try to do on the court is to explain things to people who are interested and who want to understand what is going on. And so I just encourage everyone to continue to invest in your families and communities and society as we move forward.
Amen. Thank you, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.